Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And it's Saturday afternoon, getting ahead of this Sunday Game 3 here back in Dallas now for these Mavericks and the Timberwolves. Not sure if we all expected this thing to be 2-0 in the direction of the Mavs going back to Dallas. Could have easily been 1-1. Really nice comeback there in Game 2. We're going to be taking a look at best bets here in this one. Also have some play props up in a separate episode. We're bringing you both of these each and every day now throughout the rest of these playoffs. So continue to follow along and subscribe to that page. Also head to thelines.com. Use everything we have up on the site right now to help you with all of these best bets and play props that you guys are making as well throughout this postseason. Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first best bet here.
Yeah, I'm going with the only thing that I felt really confident about in Game 2. The same bet here, which is both teams to get to 100. And the odds have only flipped from plus 105 to minus 110. It wasn't really a sweat in Game 2. Once Dallas woke up in the second half, I was like, for a minute, it was like, oh, is Minnesota actually going to hold them under 100 and win this with their defense? But no, they have no answers. Luka is so comfortable, absolutely in his happy place, playing this defense, and apparently nothing made him happier than dancing on Rudy Gobert for that game winner. But I mean, he's averaging 32.5, 10.5. The Mavs getting 58 paint points. They're either shooting perfectly at the rim, I believe, in Game 1 at least. They did not miss a shot where Rudy Gobert is not in the restricted area. Or they're just, making him dance like a marionette in pick and roll and just absolutely getting whatever they want. Like, they've been scoring all these points and have not even shot well from three in general. And on the flip side, I mean, Minnesota, I guess we're worried about their offense, but they're averaging 106. And Cat and Ant are shooting 30%. Ant is shooting under 30% on 2-pointers in this game. I mean, we can talk about that a little bit more, but I mean, he's clearly a little shook by the way the game is refereed, maybe by just the way Dallas is walling him off. He keeps, throwing out the fatigue excuse, or maybe it's just the reality. Both those guys were just up on the podium after beating Denver, like they had won the championship. And I think that was the biggest issue with me trying to handicap this series, is the human nature that Minnesota is just everybody's calling this the NBA Finals, and we won it. We won Game 7. We had a crazy comeback. We're the cast meow. Yeah, you got to bring it now, and now you actually have a tougher matchup for you guys the way you're constructed. So I think if there's any positive regression for those guys, the Minnesota offense should be just fine. I don't think you're well, Naz Reid isn't going to shoot well. Naz Reid will shoot well if he's given the opportunity. The Wolves can make up adjustments to get more Naz, more Kyle Anderson in there, get some more offensive options, and take a little bit of pressure off Ant, so then he can attack an unbalanced part of the floor, right? And that means maybe less Rudy Gobert, who, like we're saying, is not doing much defensively in this particular matchup. The Mavs, they do tend to score a little less at home, right? I mean, that's this weird home road split where Luka just thrives off the hate of the road crowd. Kyrie probably does subtly too. But I mean, they've given up 104 straight at home. They're still scoring about 109 in these playoffs at home. 100 points is just not that hard to come by, especially when you're just in a matchup that is so favorable for what you want to do offensively. Because as the Wolves now scramble to try to limit these two guys, they're going to leave open shooters. They're going to continue to foul. And they're going to be vulnerable to that lob, which has generated all those pain points.
So many thoughts. We were talking about it a minute ago. First of all, did not expect to hear the cat's meow on today's episode of the show. So congrats to you for the 1920 slang. I love it. He's really the cat's pajamas. I'm just in agreement with, I love Stan Van Gundy, by the way, just such a good voice as color on the broadcast, and was really pointing out right away was why is Rudy on the floor at the end of the game if you just plan to switch whatever screen comes at Luka? That was so weird. Why would you do it? Now you've got Rudy in the blender. And I think all of us had a moment of oh no. As soon as we saw that Rudy switch, we were I don't even think he's going to go into the lane. I think he's just going to shoot this three, and he's so damn confident right now. And then not safe for work. Don't let your kids see what Luka was saying to Rudy afterwards. That was anger at its finest for Luka, who is a dog right now for sure. Yeah, so I'm in agreement in a lot of ways with you here with the points. I think we're both teetering on the edge of saying I think this goes 3-0, but we don't want it to because we just want more basketball, so we're avoiding saying it. But it's more of a lean than obviously strong enough for a play for either of us. But I'm going to talk about the first quarter for a minute because I would not necessarily just rush to your local sports book and start betting on first quarter for the Wolves necessarily. They have been a slow starting team for the most part, literally outside of that Denver series where it was like that was. You brought it up. That was kind of their Super Bowl. It kind of felt like it, right? It was something that they had been thinking about for 365 days, maybe a little bit more, and we're ready to come back with that vengeance. So now against Dallas, it's pretty natural to have a let up. But I would also just say that Dallas, man. My bet here is going to be just Cat first quarter points leader. I'm just going to get that in there real quick because I do want to talk about the first quarter in general. The idea here is it's plus 650 really is what it comes down to, and that's available on FanDuel as they've started giving us these first quarter points leader bets, which are pretty fun, honestly. And to me, it's between he and Luka. I still like Luka to get his, but we're getting plus 650 for Cat to have one more point than Luka, and you also get the dead heat here. So if it pushes with Luka and they have the same amount of points, you split that plus 650, right? And so it's still a really 3-1 on your money. I will take that absolutely. So you're in a good spot there if it ties. The thing too is like Luka's at 6.5 points, which also is disrespectful. I'm going to talk about that. That's wild to me. He's averaging basically 10 points per game in the first quarter on the season, including the regular season. But Cat's at 5.5, and Luka's at minus 102 to the over. Cat's at like minus 122 to the over for his 5.5 points. All those numbers mean that like the books don't think it's that much more likely the way that they're pricing things that Luka gets 7, let's say, and Cat gets 6, right? Like it's still like pretty close in how they're capping these two dudes in the first quarter. And that would be where I'd rather go is like one player on the Wolves to kind of try to take over in the first quarter rather than the whole team being able to really take on this Dallas squad and win the first quarter. Dallas has the ninth best rather against the spread record in the regular season in the first quarter. Minnesota was all the way in the bottom 7. They were 7th worst there with that first quarter against the spread. I'm not saying that's what you use. I'm just saying it's like they're a big engine that takes a second to get going, it really seems like. Plus, they wear you down throughout the game, do the Wolves, right? That's been something that they've relied upon. And why it hasn't worked is because there's two dudes on the other side of the floor that can just take a break whenever the other one's taken over in Kairuka. And that's been a huge, this is the perfect squad to beat up on Minnesota. It's just so much more obvious now than it was with two really good when their bigs are playing this well, I should say. Gafford and Lively having incredible games. But for Cat, I think he comes out here and he tries to set the tone. I mean, he's never been shy from being like, I got this, essentially, right? And I think he'll come back and try to do that down 2-0. And I think he might be better. I know he is, honestly. At this point, he's better suited to do that than Ant Edwards. I don't want to just throw Ant under the bus entirely and be like, yo, you should do better, because I kind of want to give Jason Kidd and that defense a little bit more kudos than I do want to sort of trash Ant's effort. I still think it was there. I think he came out and did the right stuff in the early parts of the game. But I think on both sides of the floor, Kyrie is such a big problem because you don't have another good defender for him unless you have NAW in there. And you put NAW in there, now you don't have Mike Conley. You take Rudy off the floor, okay, but Gafford is probably going to own a lot of people out there too. Nas has been playing more on the 3-point line. So all this to say, I like Cat more than I like Ant in this game, to be honest. They might have a similar amount of points, but I still think it's an easier bucket for Cat to get with PJ Washington, who is a very good defender. But when Cat has gone to the lane in this series so far, and he's driven the ball towards the basket 7.5 times per game in the first 2, he's very effective doing that. He's gotten to the line almost 35% of the time, and he's scored on about 65% of those drives. Not passing it. He has had 2 assists on his drives in the first 2 games combined. But let's proceed with caution when we're talking about Cat assists, just because he had a few in a couple games, throwing those lobs. His assist prop has gotten pretty high. So I think he's going to focus on the scoring, man, and the threes will still be there for him. He's taken 9 and then 6 of them. So he's still looking for his 3-point shot. And I think he'll continue to look for his shot in general and be the first quarter points leader is something I'm into for plus 650.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about setting the tone, and Ant did bounce back and set that tone in the first quarter, but didn't seem to work for what Minnesota wanted to establish, right? Because then he was basically invisible down the stretch and basically choked away the game. So, I mean, maybe Cat, instead of setting the tone the way he did, which was some weird one-legged step backs, like as if he's an ode to Dirk Nowitzki, who he thinks he's the best shooting big man of all time. He's trying to show up Dirk or something. It's like, no, you got to go to the basket here. The Wolves need to establish something towards the basket. They're shooting 54% of the restricted area. It is not good enough. So it makes sense maybe for that to oscillate a little bit. I was leaning towards Ant to lead the quarter in the first quarter again and just come back with that aggression. But maybe there's a different approach there from Mr. Edwards, who's again said he ran out of gas. Like again, it looked like he just couldn't play in the fourth, and that's why I'm taking the Mavs to win the fourth quarter. I mean, I am willing to lean towards, again, Mavs covering -3. It seems like that number's going up because people are in agreement sort of that this series is just over. Like the Wolves have won the 3-point shooting battle, and regression might come there. And Dallas has won everything else, and they're just dominating down low. They're cooking every matchup, but most importantly, like they're way better in the clutch. And that 97 offensive rating that the Wolves posted in the clutch after the All-Star break is now coming home to roost a little bit after they posted a 200 offensive rating in the series against Denver. They're now down at 100. Dallas is at 122 versus OKC and 116 in this series in the clutch. So we know, I mean, those are just the numbers. We know Luka and Kyrie are getting them a good shot every time. They're very in control. They're very experienced in the playoffs. And I mean, Ant, like, it's understandable that, like, he's seen these wall defenses and he doesn't know what to do, but that was pretty inexcusable. Like, I will come at the man's character. He's only 22, but he didn't want it. Like, he didn't want to take a shot to seal that game. He had two opportunities to take his pull-up, and you are a long way from being compared to Michael Jordan if you're not even going to be willing to take those shots. So that really cost Minnesota the game, more so than that. I know we love to pile on Gobert and throw him under the bus, but Minnesota should have been up by 4, or at least, they would have had their leader taking a shot there. But now, as it stands, Mavs have averaged 28 to 22 in these fourth quarters. They've outscored them by 10 in the second half in this game. And after allowing 60 plus in 3 straight first halves, they've won all 3 of those games. So I will throw out a lean. Like, it depends how you want to move the units here, but Wolves to lead at halftime and Mavs to win, which has happened in both games so far, plus 500. And if you were to put half your unit on that and then a full unit on Mavs halftime full time, which is plus 115, you're guaranteed a 6% profit if the Mavs win, and there's no halftime tie, which would be a tough beat, I believe. So, but it's a 400% profit if there is that same trend happening here, which is the Mavs allow themselves to get behind a little bit and then come back and win the game. So just an interesting thing to look at in terms of how you portion your units. But I think the thing we can rely on most is like the Mavs winning this fourth. Hopefully the Wolves are ahead if you beat this, if you bet this, because Mavs are coming right back, and these guys are not going away with their backcourt.
Yeah, the only way that this obviously goes awry is if if one of these teams are blowing the other one out, and really it would have to be the Mavs blowing out the Wolves for me to really buy into that, right? And I would say that the blowout doesn't seem like a realistic possibility here. I mean, if the Mavs go down, we've seen them now come back, both games, as you said. If the Wolves go down, that's gonna be tough to see, but that'll still be sort of a toss up, and at half a point, right? Like your confidence in this bet is based on the closing powers of Luka and Kyrie. If they don't both need to be on the floor for the majority of the fourth because it's not a close game, well, honestly, this Mavs bench has still been plenty fine. I mean, Jaden Hardy looks really good right now. I mean, I think between Jaden Hardy, Josh Green, Derek Jones, could even throw THJ out there. You throw that lineup out in the fourth quarter in the event that it is a blowout on either side, and that ain't a bad lineup, man, right there. Like, if any of those dudes are playing Summer League next year, they're going to, like Josh Green and company, like, they're going to be the best team on the floor. So anyway, I agree with this in principle, because all things hold true in how we think the first 3 quarters will go, and it's a close game. Yeah, Mavs just have that closing power, man. It's just so obvious at this point. I'm going to go with, I don't know if I want to call it a hedge, but this is ridiculous. Luka is at 6.5 points in the first quarter, and it's minus 105. like on DraftKings. And so I hope that you guys can get to this ASAP, because I just don't know how this stays at 6.5. It's been living at 7.5. He just had a good first quarter in this last game and went over pretty quickly, hitting his first three. When that first three goes in, Luka's coming the rest of the quarter, and that those threes are going to go in a little bit better. They was talked about on the broadcast. Jake Kidd talked about it, but he doesn't even need that. So I'm taking him over 6.5 first quarter points. Like I said, minus 102. Do not think this is showing him any respect. On the season, he averaged 9.7 points per game in the first quarter and went over this number in 73% of the games that he played. And we're getting this at even money, right? Like the math ain't math in there from the books, in my opinion. The playoffs, 8.9, so still at 9 points per game in the first quarter. Went over in 11 of the 14 games that he's played in this one, and he got 6 in two of the other 3. So he's either getting 6 or he's getting more than that, right? And if you wanted to take him at like 6+ on DraftKings and then add it to something else like an Ant first quarter or Cat, like I said, that's cool. I'm kind of spreading it around a little bit in the first quarter. Obviously, if Luka goes off, then my Cat bet is out. But like, I just think he's very obviously. I've just told you how likely it is and what the implied probability should be for him to go over something that he's done very consistently over a very large sample size, which would be the entire season. If you look at the volume for him, like the only reason he didn't go over in the last game, it was like Kyrie randomly decided that he was going to score 13 points in the first quarter and not wait for the second half to get his. But by the way, is anybody surprised that Kyrie had 15 in the fourth? Like anybody? I'm not. There was a lot of people online being like, what the hell? Where's Kyrie? And I was like, he'll be here in a minute, man. He's just late right now. He'll be here. Don't worry. And sure enough, that first 3 goes in, and I just wanted to like shout from the rooftops, like, Kyrie for 20, everybody, it's coming, because he just made that first 3. But for the first quarter stuff, like Kyrie's gone under every game except for that one that I was just talking about. That is the anomaly here. In fact, he's averaging less than 3 points per game in the first quarter in the playoffs. If you take out the 113-point game, he's averaging 1.8 points per game in the first quarter in the other 13 games of these playoffs. The other thing about Luka is they're running that pick and roll to death in the first quarter. They're doing it whenever Luka's on the floor, but Gafford is another great look at that first quarter points as well, because of the fact that like that's whose hands the ball is in. It's Luka, right? And to your point about Rudy and like whether or not he has a place in this series, he'll have a place if they direct him to play. Stop playing drop D. Like this is crazy. Go watch all of Luka's shots and you just watch Gobert backpedaling, and it's like, is nobody going to help this at all? You're just going to let Luka walk in, like they're just walking together. Yeah, Rudy going backwards, Luka going forwards, and it just doesn't make any sense to concede that ground to him. But until I see something otherwise, and the amount that they run that play in the first quarter, then yeah, I'm going to take Luka to get 7 points. He's taking 7 shots. He's making 1 3 per game in the first quarter. He's taking 2 to 3 of them in the first quarter. He's taking about 2 free throw attempts in the first quarter as well, making almost both of them. Not the best free throw shooter. Still waiting for him to improve dramatically on that, but had a better season this year. Either way, like 2 free throw attempts, great. 2 3-point attempts where he's making 1, or 3 rather, where he's making 1 of them. Awesome. 7 shots that are all going to, 4 of them are going to be in the lane, that like little bunnies. Great. Just needs to make 3 of those. 1 of his 3. Like there's just so much math here that is easy for us to get to our 7-point total at even money. Like this just to me is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty low for a guy like Luka who's had his way in this series. I mean, Kyrie didn't, for some reason, go off in that first game. He went off because Ant Edwards directly called him out. Like, I got him. Oh. And he was like, all right, we'll see about that. But now Kyrie can start saving up his smoke dodging for when he goes to Boston for game 1 of the finals. But yeah, in the meantime, Luka is all fired up for this series, as you saw with the vitriol he directed at Rudy Gobert and then at the Minnesota fans after that one. Just not a super likable guy unless you're back in Dallas, but he is a killer right now.
A dog, complete dog. So yeah, I'm with you on that. That is all the time though that we have for you in the Best Bets episode. We also have Playa Props up in a separate video, so make sure you are subscribed to that page here and continue to follow along for the rest of this postseason. And until we do see you next, happy betting.